Greetings and welcome to this very special edition of Campus Conversations. I'm Dan Mogulof from the university's Office of Communications and Public Affairs. Today, it is my distinct honor and pleasure to welcome UC President Michael Drake. But before we begin our conversation, a brief introduction. In August of 2020, Dr. Drake was appointed the 21st president of the University of California, a former chancellor at UC Riverside and president of Ohio State University. He now oversees UC's world-renowned system of 10 campuses, 6 academic health centers, 3 nationally affiliated labs, and more than 290,000 students and 230,000 faculty and staff. President Drake also holds faculty appointments at the UCSF School of Medicine as a professor of ophthalmology and at the UC Riverside School of Medicine as a professor of medicine. We have already received a great number of questions, understandably, for President Drake, but we also welcome your questions as we go along. Just post them to UC Berkeley's Facebook Live site, and we'll do our best to respond to as many as possible. President Drake, welcome to Campus Conversations.
Good to be with you.
So for those of us who don't know you and don't know your background well, tell us a little bit about where you grew up, how you got into medicine, and what led you on the path to higher education leadership.
Well, great question. And as I said, glad to be with all of you today. I was born in New York City, and my family moved just after I was born. That I made the apartment too small. We had an older brother and sister. We moved to a house in Englewood, New Jersey, where I began elementary school. This was in the 1950s. Englewood was completely segregated. Englewood is just across the George Washington Bridge, so about 4 miles from Manhattan, closer to Manhattan than parts of New York. And but it was a segregated community, so the community that I lived in was entirely the Black community. I began school there. Everyone in my class was Black, and that was the way the world was, and it's the only world that we knew. My father was in training and finished his training and got an opportunity for a new job in California. And kapow, when I was just under 8, in the summer before I turned 8, we moved to Sacramento, which was, shockingly across to a different kind of world. And we moved to Sacramento into a new kind of growing neighborhood in South Sacramento. The houses were all within a few years old, though the neighborhood had been ranch land a decade before. And then I went to a school there where my younger brother and I were the only 2 African-American kids in our grade school out of 800 kids. So that was a shocking difference. One other difference, interestingly, when we moved to Sacramento was there were the 2 of us in the elementary school, but there were also hundreds of Asian and Latino students, and people who I'd never known in my life before in New Jersey. And so there was diversity in the school. There were people from different backgrounds in the school, but there's very little African American diversity in the school. But I then was in grade school, middle school, high school in this kind of community. By the time I got to high school, the community was larger, and the integrated nature of the nature of the neighborhoods that formed the sending neighborhoods from my high school meant that in the 1960s, my high school had the demographic profile, a demographic profile that kind of mirrored the demographic profile of the United States. Roughly 70-ish% were white students, 10-ish% were Latino, 10-ish%, so higher than the country as a whole, but 10-ish% were Asian, and 10-ish% were African American. So if you looked at the high school, it looked more like the kind of diversity you'd see in the country as a whole, and I had that experience. So anyway, got into the kind of demographics of growing up. But those are the communities I grew up in. I didn't mention I was good at long division or something like that, and so I was accelerated forward in grade school. My birthday's in the summer, so I graduated high school when I was 16.
Mhm.
Didn't going away for school wasn't something I thought about much. There weren't so many options that we can talk about that later. But I went to community college in Sacramento, City College, with the idea of transferring to one of our schools. I was probably going to transfer to Cal Berkeley when I went, and so I kind of planned on a Cal Berkeley transfer pathway, thinking about going to medical school. While I was there, Martin Luther King was assassinated, and many more colleges opened the concept of someone like me perhaps attending, and one of those was Stanford, and that was something that I hadn't thought of before, but it seemed like an interesting, new, and challenging thing to do, and so I went to Stanford,
Hmm.
and then actually had a great time. Different world though. I was a whole different world being there than what I had been used to or what my family had been used to. Stanford, and then I'll make this part short. It was Stanford to UCSF for medical school, all great, terrific. Got kind of interested in academic medicine by the interactions I had with classmates and with faculty members who became mentors. I had actually a great time in medical school. And then that led, I'd always been interested in education and teaching, and I found that academic medicine was a way that you could do teaching, you could do research, and you could see patients, and those were the things I loved doing. And so that kind of opened up to an academic medical career. And then my connection with, I never made a decision to change to more higher education focused work. It was really one opportunity after another opened up, and I sort of went through those open doors, but I never once for a minute said, oh gosh, I think I'd like to change my career and do something different. It was really, I'd be doing one thing, and we can talk about that's important, but I'd be doing my regular work, and someone would call and say, well, gosh, here's an opportunity. And then I would say, oh, that sounds like a fun thing to do. And that kind of led the pathway toward being vice president of UC, and then the chancellor. I was chancellor at Irvine. You said Riverside earlier, but I was actually chancellor at Irvine.
Oh my
And
gosh,
Ohio.
sorry.
It's all a family, so we're cool. And then Ohio State, and then coming back here. So that's long story, but yeah, that's the flow.
A long story and a fascinating journey. I'm wondering, you've been in the higher education game for a long time in leadership positions and also in faculty positions. How do you think the role of college president, of university CEO has evolved over time in your experience?
The wonderful description of universities that came from now one of my predecessors, Clark Kerr, in the 1960s, when he talked about the multi-university. And what he was speaking of is that colleges as a place for people to go to school and get a college degree, great. But the research that we do, the patient care that we do, the interactions we have with industry and government mean that our universities are actually many things to many people and extend well beyond the borders of our campuses out into the world. The roles that people have had as college presidents have always been complicated roles with many constituents. But now, more than in the past, we are connected to the outside world. And I think that one has to be careful and thoughtful about business and managing large amounts of money, larger than it used to be. Our budget at the University of California this year is over $50 billion. That's a larger budget than most of us grew up thinking about. And then we also have to be extraordinarily connected to politics and policy and events in the world in a way that, again, one might not have thought one had to be. You're at the college, but things that happen halfway around the world among people you've never met become your front and center business today and now, and you have to get it right. And so I think those complexities are larger. One other thing that's changed for us, I think, over time is that, when we are public university, that's great. The state of California has been a great funder and supporter of the university. Years ago, many of our campuses were 70-80% funded by their university, by the state budget. Still very, very important, but it was the overwhelming funding support was the state budget, a little bit of tuition, and then a few other things. Now we have campuses that are in the 20% funded by the state budget,
Right.
and 10%. UCSF is under 5%. So the connection with the funding mechanisms of the world, the patients that we see, the research that we do, the contracts that we have, that's a much larger part of our foundation. So we have those financial partners as well as a larger part of our portfolio these days.
Do you think the job has become more difficult? There's also sort of a political level. We've seen in public opinion polls that there's a division in the country about the value and worth of higher education. Has sort of the context within which higher education operates changed from your perspective?
Yes and no. So yes is yes, and we see that, and you'll see college presidents on TV or in the front page of the newspaper talking about things that are really world affairs and world events that are reflected on their campuses. That's an unusual thing. And they're college presidents as a category of person. It's not that something happened to Susan Jones or whatever it is. It's that the college president is here representing that position. And that seems unusual. I think I have to think about when that would have been the case in the past. So that's a different and more challenging role. The no part, I said yes, and so I said yes first. We see, I see the polls about the changes in how people feel about college and going to college and attending college. I don't mean to be controversial, but I'll say that we see more applications than ever. And so it's not like the line has gotten any shorter. One of our biggest problems is that we can't accommodate the significant majority of people who apply to us and are qualified. We have some of our campuses now that have a less than 10% acceptance rate of the people who apply who are qualified. So we have overwhelming demand. And I will have to say that maybe I was going to say not to be cynical, but that's when I was going to say something that was cynical. I've watched people on TV or in speeches talk about how challenging the issues they have with higher education, but then off stage they would make sure that I knew that their daughter was applying to our school, and so I think that colleges are not for everyone. Our universities are not for everyone, but we're a significant part of the society. And I think that I've not talked to anyone yet who's told me they believe that we shouldn't be doing broadly what we're doing, or that we should not try to do a great job of it. They might argue about the way we're doing it or some of the things that we're doing, but they don't say we should stop doing medical research or stop taking care of patients or stop producing literature or stop educating the workforce for the future. No one yet has said this is a bad thing. They've just talked about aspects of it that they might not agree with, but that's different than saying that we should back off or not do it anymore.
Yeah, great answer. Interesting answer. So many different levels and layers to it. We're going to talk more about those broader issues that you mentioned, the extent to which the public university is porous to the outside world. But first, I want to just sort of stay home at Berkeley. I understand you have a personal connection to Berkeley. Talk to us a little bit about that and why this place is special to you.
I have a personal connection to all of our campuses, my family, so I want to make sure I say that for anyone listening. So I'll talk about my connection to Berkeley as part of it. In our real connection to Berkeley, first, I mentioned being in high school in Sacramento, and my best friends who went to college went to Cal. And so I spent many weekends and visits coming to Cal football games, going to musical concerts, going to Top Dog at 2:00 in the morning as a normal thing to do multiple times. And so I felt very connected from those days. I played tennis a lot when I was younger, and there were wonderful tennis courts on the Cal campus, some that you could wait in line for, some that you could climb a fence and play on without waiting in line. And so I had that that was always a great part of the past. But I think what you might be referring to is my wife grew up in Berkeley from the time she was a year old. Her father was a surgeon who his practice was in Emeryville, but they lived in Berkeley. So she always went to parochial schools, but began kindergarten and went all the way through high school in the East Bay. And we were married. I bought my wedding ring on Telegraph Avenue. We were married on the Berkeley campus many years ago. So it's always been home. And so that's it. So we have a special, that her family lived there forever. With our children, we go to grandma and grandpa's house hundreds of times. And it's a great place that we all grew up and think of as home.
So I have to channel what I know the campus community is thinking or wondering about. So how do you see Berkeley? What are your aspirations and goals for this campus? Are we just one of 10, or does Berkeley occupy just maybe a little bit of a special place in your institutional heart?
I don't want to say this wrong. I'll be really careful. I have a great feeling for each of our campuses and things that they're doing, and it feels like a family. And I don't want to be in any way parental or anything, but it feels like it's my family. If that the case, Berkeley would be the firstborn. The Berkeley was where we all started, where the University of California started, and Berkeley really defined for the United States and in many ways for the world what it means to be a public research university. I've had a chance, we were doing the search for our new chancellor, Chancellor Lyons, just this last year. And so we had to work on the job description and how we would describe this, and then meet with the many, many candidates for this position and describe when we do this, we're doing a recruitment a lot of times because we're looking at people who are bound to really outstanding jobs. And so we had to think ourselves about what is it that's special and so special about Berkeley. And we were able to share that. Now, again, many of them were connected already, so they came with that. And I think particularly Chancellor Lyons, as a Cal undergrad, loves the campus and feels it in his heart. But the special collection of outstanding faculty, of utterly brilliant students who are intent on impacting and changing the world, I think there's nowhere that this is more manifest than on the Berkeley campus. I met a Cal alum 2 days ago. I think this was Monday and Tuesday. Actually, we had 2 days. And it's the Crown Prince of Norway was here visiting on a trade mission, looking at sustainability in the future and wanting Norway and California to partner on being leaders in their respective spheres in decarbonization and sustainability efforts. So Norway leading for Europe, California leading for the United States, and the Crown Prince and the governor being the two counterparts. But I had breakfast with the Crown Prince, great privilege, and we were just chatting about that and his experience at Berkeley. And what he said was that when he arrived, he had interest in what he'd been in the Navy, he thought he might want to do something in engineering, et cetera, as he was thinking about his career path. But the thing that was terrific about Cal was that every department he looked to, there were world leaders. Yeah. And there was a pathway forward to being the best in the world from where you stood at Cal. And there are campuses that are great in engineering or great in humanities or great in physics or whatever, have one of the things that they're terrific at. Cal is one of those rare places that is world-class across the board. And I think that's where it's a privilege to be associated.
Yeah. And with that in mind, I mean, I was with you at the press conference when you announced Rich Lyons' selection as our next chancellor. But I think not everybody had a chance to hear what you said about how he rose to the top and about what led to his selection and how that intersects with your own vision and aspirations for the Berkeley campus. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yes, well, first I'll say just a word about Chancellor Christ. Carol came in at a time when the campus was having tension. I guess that's probably many times that's the case, but there was tension. And what it needed was a visionary but stable, calming leader who could, take the confidence of the faculty and the students and the staff and say, we're going in this direction through these times. That happened before the pandemic. When the pandemic hit, rather than being jarred off course, she kept really focused on lifting and guiding the campus forward. So I just want to make sure to, as we talk about this transition, to acknowledge Carol and the great work that she's done. Inspiring. Rich came from a pool. We did a national search. People are nominated, but also apply themselves. We had hundreds of highly qualified people. We boiled that down to about 25 incredibly qualified people, and then painstakingly whittled that down to a dozen, and then met with those people to talk about what they might do and what their vision for Berkeley might be. And I think that Rich said a couple of things that came from Rich that made a lot of difference to us. One, to be honest, his I wouldn't have put this down in we listed the criteria in the job description that we advertised, but his love for Berkeley and what Berkeley is and the Berkeley community was something that he oozed, and I think that was tremendously important to us. So we talked about academic qualifications and financial wherewithal and all of those kinds of things. We didn't speak of love per se, but Rich's love for the campus and love for the history of the campus and the potential for its future. That was an important thing for us. He understands, and I think he spoke to this, the need to preserve the core mission of teaching, research, and public service, but to really make sure that Berkeley leads in approaching that work with a lens of equity and innovation. So I think that was really important. And I think also his approach to the job, he committed to us at the very beginning. He said, really, when he'd been on campus, he'd been a dean, he has a campus-wide role in innovation and entrepreneurship. He himself was a student years ago, but he knows this is a different role because he'll now be a decision maker. And he committed that one of the things he was going to do at the beginning is become really a student of Berkeley and listen actively to the various voices in the community as he's assuming this new position and moving forward. He is extraordinarily excited about Cal's future. We're extraordinarily excited about him.
Fantastic. Let's shift our focus a little bit back to Sacramento, actually, not in terms of where you grew up, but in terms of where the state's legislature sits. You're on point for the university's relationship with the state, and we're facing a tough budget year. What does your forecast call for, and what do you think the impact is going to be on the university as a whole, and Berkeley in particular, these difficult financial times the state is facing?
Well, a couple of things. Difficult year for us this year. Actually, terrific year the last 2 years. The two largest financially, our two best years ever as far as the level of state support that we got. Significant increases in permanent funding and also over $1 billion in one-time funding 2 years ago just to help us move things forward. So we are coming from an historically strong relationship with the governor and the legislature with terrific support. This year, the governor has proposed that we would, although the state is being squeezed, the governor proposed that we are held flat. But I just want to make sure that our flat budget is $500 million higher than our budget was 2 years ago. So it's up by $500 million in permanent money, held flat there. We were scheduled to have another $250 million increase this year as a part of our compact. The governor has said, well, we need to pause on that, and then we'll get that next year along with the planned increases that would have happened. Otherwise, we'll learn more about how able the governor and the legislature are to do that after the May revise, which is coming up in about 3 weeks now, 3 weeks. We'll see where things are. But again, the governor and legislature have been extraordinarily supportive to us. They appreciate what we do. They say so, and then they've raised our budget, which is nice. And in a time of cuts, what they promised to do is to hold it flat now and then come back next year to backfill what they didn't do for us. We understand the reality of the world, and they can hope and plan for things that then turn out to be more challenging in the future. So we'll stir that in. But for this year, we're and again, I'll know more in 3 weeks than I do today. We're planning on the budget that we mentioned in the fall, which will require some extraordinary belt tightening for us, but will still allow us to have an increase in compensation for our policy coverage staff as a part of a 3-year plan to deal with the effects of the high inflation we had a couple of years ago.
Thank you. Before I go on to other questions, just for those of you who have joined late, we're this special edition of Campus Conversations. We're talking with UC President Michael Drake. We already have a number of questions that you've submitted. We'll try to get to all of them, but if you have more as we go along, post them to our Facebook Live site, and we'll do our best to get to them. Back to campus issues, President Drake. Let's talk a little bit about campus safety, another issue that's been in the press, that's clearly on the minds of students and parents. I'm sure you saw the recent coverage about the fact that a consortium of Berkeley parents actually gathered funds to pay for private security. What do you say to those who are concerned and those who are having questions about the extent to which the campuses are providing for student safety?
Well, big topic and multifaceted. So first, I'll say that safety is extraordinary. It's almost our number one priority. We have to, all the things that we do require us to have a safe and comfortable place for people to learn and to think and to work and to do their research. And so our campuses should be kind of an oasis of safety in our complicated world. We're not entirely protected, obviously, from the world. The Cal, for instance, is in the middle of the city, so it's just across the street. And so there are issues that, of course, affect us. And we have a very dedicated force of safety personnel who are there to help make our campuses safe for all of our students and our faculty and our staff. You know, I noted but that doesn't mean we can reduce the threat to zero. So that I understand that we'd like it to be zero. We can't make the threat zero. I understood, and I just learned really through the newspaper articles about the group of people that were hired by a group of parents to kind of patrol the sidewalks and the regions around the campus. But as I read the story, they said they found extraordinarily few actual incidents that they could intervene, or where they were necessary to intervene. In fact, essentially none, as I'm remembering. And so we know that even though the risk is not zero, it's actually awfully low, and that our own safety personnel do a good job of that. We, of course, would want to be coordinated with everybody who's doing safety and make it that it's one group of professionals that we're dealing with. But I noted this effort, but again noted that the effort didn't then change things much. It just kind of reinforced that generally things are maybe not as bad as one might have thought. We put a great deal of effort starting 3 years ago into community safety, and we came out with a system-wide community safety plan. We came out with a different way of looking at uniforms, vehicles, and equipment. We've come out with a different and more involved way of allowing our communities work with particularly our sworn officers and others, to work with our police forces to help make sure that those people who are on campus to make us feel safe are connected to the campus. They're not somebody else, but they're actually us working with us. And we then put a lot of money into having a very active and transparent data collection system, so we could see how safe people really were and what was really happening, and were there differences between the campuses on things like use of force. And so as we gather those data, we're learning more and doing that. We want to do our best to be an exemplary community in this way. And we hired actually a system-wide safety officer who travels to all the campuses, meeting with student affairs, meeting with the faculty, meeting with staff organizations, meeting with the sworn officers, all the different constituents, to make sure that everyone is feeling safe and being safe, and that our community that everyone's leaning in to help us be the safest community that we can be. And so, in a large sense, it's something we care about a lot and are putting an effort into, and I hope that things are getting better. In the smaller sense, campus by campus, we do our best to be supportive of the campus community in keeping itself safe, and I think overall we do a better than average job.
Thank you. I want to turn to the issue of finances, and we have a question that came in from a member of our audience, which I will read to you.
Great.
It's as follows. Most of Berkeley's peer universities have academic health centers that generate substantial revenue that subsidizes programs that are core to the university's mission. Even within the UC system, Berkeley is unique in being the only large campus without an academic health center. Understanding the complexities involved with having UCSF just across the bridge, do you foresee UC Berkeley ever having an academic health center?
Yeah, you know that uh, so the UCSF, the medical school started first, in San Francisco alone around the same time that Cal started across the bay, and then they essentially merged. And then after 1908, UCSF, the basic science part was in Berkeley for decades, and so we had there's a long connection between the two. And I actually think that UCSF, and since it's all a family to me, UCSF and Berkeley are really pretty connected now. And with what we look for, we have a variety of ways that this happens today. We look for stronger collaborations over time, even though I think they're very strong now. We look for stronger and stronger collaborations over time. So I think it would be more likely that we would expand those collaborations and expand efforts that people could work on mutually, rather than standing up another academic medical center in the East Bay. Extraordinarily expensive and costly. Easier to have partnerships work on those things, as we've done. We are standing up the academic medical training and then service programs in Riverside and in Merced, in places where they don't exist. But I think that the UCSF, UC Berkeley, now 150-year collaboration, nearly 150, 1896 or so for UCSF, but that collaboration will continue to be stronger. But I don't see us starting a separate freestanding medical center, at least not, certainly not in the foreseeable future.
All right. Thank you. And we're going to stay with pocketbook issues here. Another question that came from the campus audience. How can the University of California remain a premier employer in California when economic forces such as inflation and healthcare costs are squeezing workers?
It's a challenge for everybody in California, obviously, and we feel it. We have, as you mentioned, a 240,000 member workforce, and we want to be the best possible employer. We have every interest, and it's in our interest to be the best possible employer. We know the pressures that our staff, the people who work with us, are under broadly. One of the things that happens with our campuses is that when we put a campus in a region over these decades, it's a great economic stimulus for the region to grow. But as the region grows, it becomes more expensive, and as it becomes more expensive, it becomes more of a challenge for our own employees to live near our campuses. And we see this in every one of our sites. A couple of things that we'd like to do is to look at ways to support employees and to help make it possible for people to live closer to us. And so we're working on some housing programs, particularly I know in San Francisco, and there are other programs in other parts of the state, others of our campuses, where we can try to help with some of the housing costs that people have in our building projects, including along with them more market rate or affordable housing, I should say, more affordable housing. So I think that's an important thing. As we build student housing, we're building lots of student housing. We decrease pressure on rents in the communities that we live in, and we hope that decreased rent pressure can help to moderate the prices of rents in the communities around us. And that's an important secondary reason for adding thousands and thousands of student beds, is to really help to decompress the pressure on housing in our tight communities and help the housing be more affordable. And then we want to do the best we can we try to pay fairly. We try to have great benefits. And so all those things are meant to do what we can to support our staff, critical to the work that we do. We understand, of course, and a happy, connected, committed staff means you can be the best university in the world, and that's what we want. So that's our goal.
And speaking about staff and working conditions, do you expect to require staff? Another question that came in. Do you expect to require staff who have been successful with remote work to return to the office full time? Where does the system stand on that important question?
Yeah, there's been a big change in the post-pandemic period on where we work and how we do work. And so I think we're not going to ever go back to where we were before. And I think that many of our people who work with us can work remotely successfully. And so I think it's campus by campus and campus and unit by unit. But I don't know that we'll ever get to the time when everybody is back in at work. I think it's very valuable for many people to be in most of the time. So I think that we want to continue to make going to work a good thing and the work that's done at work a good thing, but it won't be for everyone as it was in the past. I think there'll be many people who'll be able to work successfully remotely, and I don't see us changing away from that.
Thank you. I want to return now to a subject we talked about early in this discussion. We've got a few questions that came in from the audience. And that's all that's been happening on the UC campuses, on college and university campuses across the country since October 7th. There's been tumult and turmoil. Chancellor Christ has talked about the extent to which this is unique to the extent that it's dividing the campus communities, unlike previous issues. How do you view the problem? And what is the system and what are the chancellors doing about it?
Yes, well, first I'd say that it has been quite a difficult time for the world, honestly. We see it reflected on our campuses, but it's difficult, I think, in communities and cities around our country, across Europe, really in the Middle East, around the world. This has been an extraordinarily challenging time for many people in the world. And it's unlike many of these conflicts that have occurred in different places. I think, as Chancellor Christ aptly said, it's come back to the campus, and people are divided on campus more than we're used to seeing. I was talking with someone about the Vietnam War as a time when we had great interest on campus in external events, but the campus community was pretty much, certainly the student community was locked in one consistent position of opposing, not everybody, but very largely opposing the war and kind of being in that position. There wasn't nearly as much community versus community friction on campus then, or with other issues that we've had in the past. So it's been quite challenging, because this is an issue where there are the atrocities of October 7th were atrocities. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza is horrific. An incredible number of innocent people killed on both sides. The numbers in Gaza are astronomical, but the numbers in Israel, we can't just say, oh, it was only 1,000 people or only 1,200 people. That's horrible. And so we have horrible things happening on two sides of this issue, and the world seems to be paralyzed in its ability to resolve this. I know that, yes, everyone knows that our federal government has been working hard to get a ceasefire. Many countries around the world would like that. We'd like to see that happen. It just seems extraordinarily challenging to do that. In fact, as we work to push toward a ceasefire, it seems that the leaders of the world are also working hard to prevent an escalation of the conflict and of the killing. So it's extraordinarily difficult, and it's been difficult for us. We've been working with our chancellors and other stakeholders to try to do our best to respond to issues as they arise, to provide resources, and to try to make clear that the UC community must be a safe and welcoming and inclusive space for all, even people who disagree with each other, and even people who disagree with each other profoundly. We still need to be a safe and inclusive and welcoming place. And that's one of the challenges that we have. One of the reasons this is an issue on college campuses is that we're committed to being a safe and welcoming and inclusive space. And that means we have people who have vastly different opinions and points of view about issues such as this, nevertheless a part of our community, and that's part of what we're working for. We've done a couple of things. We say this and that means something, but starting maybe 5 months ago now, We provided $7 million it's been now to our campuses to address some of these issues on campus. Berkeley has begun implementing some of these things with some innovative approaches to.
Can I interrupt you just for a sec?
Oh,
When you
sure,
say
yes.
these issues, what are you referring to? Just to make sure everybody understands.
Sorry, I was meaning really the issues that arise from the conflict, the war between Israel and Hamas.
Right.
So sorry if it was.
No. So you're talking about the ability to have discourse across the divide about community, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, all that whole basket?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, please
Basket
continue.
and beyond. And let me say, there's the ability to have discourse across the divide. Some people don't want to have discourse and want,
Yeah.
and so we have all of those forces. What we want to do is to do our best to make sure that we treat each other with respect and that people are safe. And that's sort of a baseline that we are working toward. And all of the campuses are working on this. We had, with the first I mentioned, we put together a $7 million pot for campuses to apply to support programs on campus. We divided into tranches that we had 55 proposals for the tranche that was the first half, and so that was great. And we've had a similar number for the second half, and so programs on all of our campuses to help the campuses learn better to be able to navigate and successfully address anti-Semitism, as you mentioned, Islamophobia, other forms of disrespect, hatred, and bigotry broadly, in a way to help us move forward and to give people an outlet to share their positions and passions in a way that is, again, not violent and hurtful to other members of our community, but a challenge, nevertheless.
I'm wondering how you feel about all of these efforts, whether you're optimistic or pessimistic, given that the university is confronting challenges that society as a whole has really struggled with.
Yes. So society as a whole, these are societal issues, and we're focused on the university, but we're in the context of a war, and the war's not on campus, it's elsewhere. It's the ramifications of that we're dealing with. And one of the reasons that we deal with it more than maybe some other institutions is that we have worked hard to be an inclusive community. And so we have people from the various, in this particular conflict, from various sides of the war, not only in class together or in the dining hall together, but living in the dorm together. And let me say, if that is true for this issue, it's true for any of the other issues that we might think of in the world where people come from different narratives and perspectives and traditions. I mentioned the neighborhood I grew up in. The neighborhood I grew up was that we were all quite similar. And we're still in as a society, we have neighborhoods or families that people grow up with and that are, overwhelmingly similar. When you come to our campus, the neighborhood is everybody. And at the end of the workday, they don't go home, they go back to the dorm. And so we have this kind of a collective, established community, inclusive community that brings with it different narratives, different perspectives, real disagreements, principled disagreements. And our job is to make it a safe place for those things to exist. It's not done anywhere really in the world successfully, or certainly no more successfully. Our job is to try to lead us all forward in being able to work together. We're all people, all at the end. And I'm a great believer in having us all be able to work cooperatively and successfully together. I think it makes us it's so much more rich and full to have us all come from the different parts of the tapestry woven from our different backgrounds. But that is an easier thing to say sometimes than it is to do. And part of our daily work is to continue to make that true.
Thank you. We have a related question that came in, and let me read that to you. So this person has the perception that many recent directives from the region seem to impinge on, quote, free speech rights of students, faculty, and staff. And I believe they may be referring to possible policy or decision regarding the posting of political statements to departmental websites, but maybe more, I'm not sure. But the question is, how much do you think the regents, this person asks, should interfere with what goes on in our classrooms and on our computers?
Well, I think not, I mean, as little as possible to not at all. I mean, right, that's not the, so First Amendment is something that we respect, and free speech are things that we respect and defend actively. I spent, maybe this is a bit personal, but much time defending the free speech and First Amendment rights of people on campuses that I've served on for years. I've defended them strongly, even when the opinions that were expressed were antithetical to my own. And it's been almost, I've been received, how can I say this right? Very, very negative feedback for defending people and the right that people have to say things that I don't agree with. It's been an interesting place to be, but our goal is always to be a place of new ideas and a place to share ideas. And we believe that the antidote to speech that you don't like is better speech. And that's been our mantra. Free speech or the First Amendment doesn't mean that everybody can say anything they want at any time in any place. There are reasonable restrictions there, but those are the restrictions and guidelines that apply to be reasonable. Other than that, we're very much in favor of the freedom of speech, and I'm very much in favor of the freedom of speech, and again have been a staunch protector of the freedom of speech for decades. In a content neutral way. So that's the position that I would take, and I would support the regents, and that's where the regents ought to be too, as far as I'm concerned. I think that's well, the regents make their decisions, but I think that we overall are extraordinarily interested and take seriously our responsibility to protect the freedom of speech.
Thank you. We have time for just a couple of more questions, and so I want to just sort of step back from sort of the issues of the day. And maybe if you could just talk to us about even maybe historically, also in terms of your aspirations for the future, where do you see the University of California right now, and what direction are we headed in? What are your hopes and aspirations for the system's future within the context of the state and also within the context of higher education?
Well, I'm a fan of higher education. I think, our higher education institutions are among the greatest assets that this country has over all of these years. I mentioned Clark Kerr a little earlier, and I loved one of his quotes. He said that knowledge makes the world go round, and the university is still the best place for new ideas. I think that's right. And so I think we're incredibly important to the future of California and this country, but actually to the future of the planet. I mentioned we were working on sustainability issues earlier. I think that we'll be the key to the way that we're able to deal with and protect our planet for future generations. And I think that that's very important. I also am a lover of the opportunity that we have on college campuses to work with people who are creative and curious about the world. The idea that these good ideas are in fact an important thing is exciting. And I think there's a great joy and interest that comes on college campuses and the things that happen on college campuses. By being inclusive, which is so important to us, by having access across zip codes and regions of our state and across the country, that's critically important for us to be diverse and inclusive. As we do that, that's wonderful. It makes us richer. It gives us texture. Critical for our success in the future. But we also then have people who don't have the same narrative. That's great, but they see the world in different ways, and that can produce friction. We're seeing that now, particularly focused on now, and when the world is experiencing that, we're a part of the world, and we experience that as well. Our job is to work with it as well or better than anyone else, and to come from these interactions as a stronger and more connected group of people as we move forward. And that's the real opportunity to us. And I think there's no better place for that to be done than on our college campuses.
Okay, last question. It's going to be a little bit of a softball, maybe a little bit of a hardball, but it's a heck of a position that you fill, incredibly complicated and impactful. What do you like best about it, and what do you find most challenging?
I remember softball when I was growing up. There was sport. There was softball, but I noticed that the softballs are pretty hard. It's like a big hard ball, so you have to be careful with that thing. I don't know where they got the idea of softball. What the best part of the job and the thing that's been most gratifying about it is the people and the people you get to work with. I've had this great privilege of doing this for many years now. And the people are the staff people that you work with, people who are here working all the time. I have dear friends who've been working at the university for decades. The people are the faculty who are brilliant and dedicated and selfless and pursuing knowledge and teaching students. I mean, it's just amazing people you get to know. Our students are just terrific. If I look on my phone, I have pictures of me all the way back with what must now be thousands of students in different aspects of their lives. Selfies are in a crowd at a game or whatever, but really thousands. And each one of those photographs is joyful. It's joyful for the energy that comes to the moment and for the promise of the future. And so those things are an exciting privilege. Also exciting, maybe finish on this, as I was talking with the Crown Prince about the things that we were doing. It's also great every once in a while to take a quick moment and look in the rearview mirror and see the things that we've done that have made a difference in the world, that have created opportunity for people to move forward or change the way that we were approaching things. When I was in my medical practice, I worked on a disease that was a leading cause of blindness, the leading cause of blindness for African Americans and third leading in the country. And now the blindness can be prevented. I worked on sickle cell anemia, which was a disease that had no treatment, had treatments for pain, etc., but there was no specific sickle cell treatment, nothing you can do. Now through Jennifer Doudna and the work that led to her Nobel Prize, there's actually a cure for this genetic disease. So the impact that we have is lasting and far beyond our horizons. And, we're so focused on what's in front of us and dealing with today and tomorrow and next week's challenges that we sometimes don't look in the rear to say, gosh, look at the things we've improved in the world, and that's great. And let's get back to improving the future, creating and improving the future. And I think it's a great privilege for us to be able to be engaged in that effort.
Fantastic. President Drake, I want to thank you for your time today, for your willingness to answer all the questions that we tossed your way. I know you're visiting the campus today. Hope you have a great visit. And thanks once again for joining us.
Always good to be with you, and it's a wonderful system. But I want to end today by saying, "Go Bears!"
There you go. I was wondering. Thanks, and thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks everybody for joining us for this edition of Campus Conversations, and be sure to join us towards the end of the semester for what will be Chancellor Chris' final appearance on this platform. Have a great day.
Thanks.